I'm hoping you guys can see me. So let's get going with this. I'm going to be doing two of these events talking about female sexual energy. I want to talk a bit about femininity, and I'm going to be talking about it from like a perspective that's a little bit different from maybe like what a lot of people are saying and talking about femininity. I mean, people talk about being in touch with the feminine energy, and I definitely believe feminine energy is a thing. Masculine energy, it is a thing. You know, these are things, right, that are real. But on the other hand, how can I put it? You know, I think a lot of what we're told is feminine perhaps isn't. You know, a lot of it is toxic, and it's a kind of a toxic stereotype that's been pushed onto women. And I think that one of the things, although it's true, and I agree, the masculine is giving and the feminine is receiving, at the same time, as women, it's not, the feminine is not a pushover. The feminine is not weak. The feminine is not inferior. I mean, someone not even that long ago said to me that, they said that, you know, of course men have more money and the better jobs, men are more intelligent than women, you know, something like that, you know, which is kind of, it's funny the guy thought so. It's a little bit of a joke, but I mean, in reality, we as women, we've got a lot of like really, really special, unique gifts, our own special, unique gifts. And men are, you know, they have their own special, unique gifts. It's almost like, you know, here in the physical dimension, the men are like our guardians on the physical dimension, you know. I mean, as much as there's a lot of criticism of men, I think there's a lot of incredible, amazing, beautiful men around as well, and that do a really good job of keeping us as women safe here in the physical dimension. This is the task of the women. Now, that doesn't mean as women we should just default and, you know, do nothing or expect men to serve us or play the victim or whatever we want to do, because in reality, you know, our job is to connect men into the spirit realm. And this is what sex is all about. It's all about connecting men to the spiritual dimension via our vaginas. And I mean, it's pretty obvious because the new life is birthed and born out of our vaginas. The new babies come from the spirit realm into the world out of our vaginas, and men have this deep, deep, deep desire to return back into vaginas generally, you know, and have sex with vaginas, or they have for a very, very long time. I personally, although I think there's nothing wrong in and of itself in anal sex, I think the obsession that's coming, like this, coming from influence of porn, also because a lot of men are watching a lot of porn and squeezing their penises and masturbating very, very tight. So when they go in a vagina, they don't have, they don't feel so much. Also because they don't have good penetration techniques as well. So I find that a little bit concerning, because I feel like, not that, as I said, not that there's anything in and of itself wrong with anal sex, but I think it's a sign that men really, really are losing the ability to know what to do with vaginas, and to know how to connect with vaginas, and to connect into these spiritual dimensions within the vagina. So well, now getting on to like how we as women can start to connect with our feminine energy and start to understand the feminine energy. And I've certainly explored like a lot of different people talking about polarity. I would just say I found some useful, some not useful. It's very, very difficult to shift through the information and see like what of that is really useful, because, you know, recently someone in the group got quite upset at me and left because they said a post I wrote was binary because I was talking about men and women having sex. And although on the one hand I'm like, well, how can you talk about sex if you can't talk about men and women or vaginas and penises? On the other hand, I do actually get the sentiment. I do understand the sentiment, because there's so much trauma around this idea. I think for women, you know, I definitely grew up, and I think a lot of people a lot of women grew up with this being put on to us that somehow as females we're inferior to the males. It's a really tough thing to grow up feeling that you're inherently inferior to the other half of society, you know. So it's no wonder people are getting upset about, you know, gender at all. On the other hand, you know, most beings do have either a penis or a vagina and womb. Not all do, and I'm talking about nature biologically. I have a friend that has both, born with both, another that has born with neither. But for the majority of people, we have one or the other, and we tend to have a connection with one or the other. Now, when we look at it in terms of Taoism, it's interesting to know that what it said that whichever you don't have, you have the energetic of the other, by the way. So as women, we also have an energetic penis as well as our womb, ovary, and so on and so forth. So when we connect into the female sexual energy, you know, looking at especially the way in the Tao this is done, and well, it's not a Taoist goddess, but it is a goddess that I have in my house who is Tara, the mother of Buddha. And Tara said she would always reincarnate and come back and really be here on the planet to like support women through their journey, because she knew it would always be like really, really tough to be a woman. And I think that in a lot of parts of the world, at least for the last 5,000 years, it can be really, really tough to be a woman, because as a woman we have like these special gifts. Like look at today, look at the modern world. One moment. Makita! No. Shh. Sit down. If we look at the modern world, and the modern world is all about logic, it's all built and geared towards the dynamics and the energy of the male, which is fine. You know, what the man has to offer is a wonderful thing, 50%, right? But we as women, we have some incredible gifts to offer, like some incredible healing gifts and some extremely, extremely powerful gifts. We as women are extremely, extremely powerful. I mean, nobody would have gone to the effort of putting, you know, millions of women to death at the stake and so on and so forth if women were not so powerful. We are incredibly powerful. We can give birth to a child. I mean, a lot of men literally faint just at the sight of a woman giving birth to a child. But this is a power, and this is something that women have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. Women have been ushering new life, you know, through this rather crazy process where our body, you know, expands around this baby and then spits the baby out of this hole that just seems like there's no way it could kind of fit out, you know, in what I can only describe as like a really, really spiritual experience. You know, another thing is women, we are, when it comes to sex and whatever anyone says about, you know, men are more sexual than women, this is only the result of trauma. It's the result of women not being connected to their sexual energy. Reality is we women, we are actually far more sexual than women. Than men. We have far, you know, we're multi-orgasmic. We can have sex for much, much longer than men. Just the unfortunate fact is, I think, twofold. A, most people don't really know how to have sex. And B, unfortunately, like, women have become so disconnected from their bodies over these years, as we've been told, you know, vilified, demonized, told that we don't even have orgasms and don't even enjoy sex. This is the message women were given for so many years. And at the same time, there was this huge, let's say, financial disenfranchisement of women who had all their properties seized and stolen. In fact, I think many of the women put to death, it was on account of wanting to take the property from them. And today, you know, I think they say 70% of the wealth in the world is owned by men. I mean, certainly there are women with money, there's women making money. I mean, something I hear now more and more is men complaining that women are just looking for a guy to take money from, so on and so forth. I don't deny that happens. I also think a certain type of attitude and approach to life is going to attract that kind of woman to you, by which I'm saying, if a man is emotionally unavailable, he's going to attract a woman for certain reasons, and that's going to be likely the kind of woman that's going to want to take his money. So, you know, if you look at rich guys with good jobs, good businesses, a lot of them are emotionally unavailable. So they're going to, without realizing what they're doing, attract a certain type of woman, which will then end in a very messy, expensive divorce somewhere down the line. Which is very distressing to him, and a lot of them, they don't kind of understand what's going on. And I do think, yes, this is something, and it is actually something that, strangely enough, it appears to be on the increase, not on the decrease. I mean, I remember when I was in school, feminism and so on was all about us as women, you know, having our own businesses and having our independence and having our freedom. And I don't personally think that being in a situation where you're dependent on a man financially is a healthy thing. And I also don't think, now how can I put this, when people talk about the man having a kind of authority over the woman, now people might be surprised to hear this, but I actually agree with this, right? That there is an element to which in the physical dimension, it's good for a man to have a certain type of authority over a woman. Obviously, this has to be, I know this is really controversial, and this has to be in the right energy, okay? But for example, if I look at with my partner, I don't want to go somewhere with my partner and me be thinking about everything. Yeah, I want him to just say, we're going to this restaurant, you should sit here. You know, I'm talking about things like this, like, let's do this. You know, I don't want, because of the way we as women, we actually have these brains that are so multitasking and doing so many things all the time. The last thing I want is more things to think about. And my guy just saying to me, sit down, Jade, sit there, let's do this, and so on. For me, it's a big relief, and it's like taking stuff off of me that otherwise I'm going to be doing, that's going to become like kind of overwhelming, you know? Hey, new ladies just showed up. Lovely to see you. Check out, this is a real sky behind me. It actually looks like some kind of a background, but it's just really the real sky. And I'm just talking right now about relationship between men and women, and women, female energy. Now, what I'm about to say, as I was just saying that I do believe in certain traditional type of gender roles, that they have a value to them. On the other hand, I do believe we as women should be the main earners, right? And this is something that's going to be surprising people, right? That maybe I'm saying this now. I do believe we as women, we are, I think intelligent can mean a lot of different things here, but we have certain abilities that are way, way more than a man has, you know? And when we look at, you know, look at the company Wilco, right? One of my good friends was working in Wilco, and she's just been laid off. If you don't know, it's a big company in England that's just gone bust, right? It was just completely mismanaged by, hey, surprise, surprise, all these men. It's gone bust. 12,500 people have just lost their jobs. And I mean, there's literally actually like statistics that show that companies that are owned by women do about 10% better, yeah, in their profits than those are owned by men. Yeah, sorry guys, not owned, run by women as opposed to run by men. What I'm trying to say here is, I speak to so many women. I mean, I was recently speaking to this woman who was saying she wanted to get these supplements, right? But she couldn't afford the supplements, right? And I kind of questioned her, like, how can you say you can't afford a bottle of supplements? Come on, you're a woman, you're a powerful, creative being. She got quite upset at me about saying it, you know. But she was also talking about having a kind of like some kind of a sexual issues. And the thing is, the reason I'm saying this, and the reason I'm saying all of this about women and our power and our financial power and our creative power, is that there's a big correspondence and correlation between being in touch with our sexual energy and how we're actually showing up in the world in terms of our creativity, in terms of our power, in terms of manifesting the lives we want. You know, no woman in her 40s should be sitting there going, I don't have money to buy some supplements. Not in America, not in Europe, you know. No woman should be in this situation. We should be here providing for ourselves, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our families as well. But when you look at like the problem and what this woman had said when she talked about the sexual problem, and then also the problem with the money at the same time, the two are like interlinked basically. You know, when we are not in a good relationship with our sexual energy, it's going to affect how we are creatively showing up in the world and how we are manifesting abundance. And this is so important for us to start to understand. When we look at these things and we go, oh, but this is happening, but there's no reason to it, there's no rhyme or reason to it. This is never the case. Everything is interconnected. Everything is tied together, you know. Our wombs, our ovaries, our vaginas are incredible, powerful parts of our body. You know, these parts of our body are literally like producing all of this incredibly powerful sexual energy that it's supplying into our body, and this energy can go up into our body, and it can literally start just, you know, healing our body at the cellular level, feeding us with creativity. It can start literally giving us so much. But when we're not actually in the position where we're not allowing this to come into the body, we're losing out on like 90% of our power. And I'm talking here like, you know, this is a result of belief systems that have been programmed into us over generations and generations. And it's the result of, you know, it's the result of things like, you know, what they call slut shaming. I don't like that word slut shaming, but the way that so many women are made to feel like their sexual energy is not a safe thing to be out and expressing into the world. The way that women are given the message that, you know, I mean, I've had said to me these things like, oh, you're using your feminine wiles. Oh, you're, you know, that one, what you're doing wearing that thing, you're asking for XYZ, so on and so forth, you know. And these are, when we're being shamed in this way, when we're being shamed for being sexual, you know, this is causing like a huge amount of blockage to our sexual energy when we're being shamed for what we are. And now I just see, and I find it incredibly concerning, like the increase in the amount of shame that's being put onto women just for the way that we are. I mean, for example, back in the day, right, it might have been normal for a woman around my age to put some Botox or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't personally want to do that, but, you know, you can kind of a little bit see people are getting wrinkles and getting older, they might want to have some Botox. Okay, fair enough, that's their choice, you know. But it shocks me a lot to see people in their 20s getting a lot of stuff done and actually showing it quite proudly on social media. I find it so confusing and so strange and so bizarre, because it's kind of making them all look a little bit kind of like transsexuals, basically. And obviously being a transsexual is an absolutely fine thing to be, but do biological women all want to start emanating transsexuals right now? And if you're really 20 and 25 and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, ooh, this isn't right, let me get this, and whatever you get done here is going to make this part look funny, and everything's going to fall out of balance, right? You know, but it's such a obsession with the external, whereas what's actually going on internally, it's not being looked at, it's not being acknowledged, it's not being worked on. People aren't even aware, you know. I mean, this guy, I think he's called Jordan Peterson, right? Lots of people don't like Jordan Peterson because of various things that he says. Fair enough, I can see that. But he said one thing that I thought, this is really interesting. So he says, the single most attractive feature a woman can have is having multiple orgasms, right? And I heard something similar from another guy who is a sex coach, a male sex coach, and he says there's one thing women are doing that's like fucking things up with men, that men are just going on one date, having sex with them once and leaving because they do this one thing, and that one thing is faking orgasms, right? And the guy can tell when she's faked an orgasm, and it's not that he sits there and goes, ooh, she faked an orgasm, I'm going to leave her, but it's like when a woman has a really true, authentic orgasm with a man on his penis, right, it gives him this feeling, and the feeling is something I'm only going to describe as spiritual. It cannot be faked. You know, when a woman is able to do that and have multiple orgasms with a man, it's like it drags and it attracts and it draws him into her and connects him into her in a way which is so incredibly powerful and fulfilling, and is beyond anything that can be just described in words. You know, it's sexier than any lip fillers or whatever you can get done to your face or your body or your BBL butt injections or whatever. You know, these are all things that maybe kind of look good apparently on your Instagram pictures or whatever, but in reality this is not really things that are creating like a powerful connection between you and someone else. Now, statistics seem to show that about 80% of women are not having an orgasm from vaginal sex, and I can easily see why. I mean, part of it is, I think there's a few factors here. One of them is bad sexual techniques, people not knowing how to have sex. I think that's a big factor, people not knowing how to do penetration. Most people don't know how to do penetration, right? Okay, then you also have, adding to this, right, the focus on the clitoris. What it does is it takes away the sensitivity from inside of the vagina, meaning that when a woman has had a clitoral orgasm, she's unlikely to have an internal one. And when a woman is repeatedly just having clitoral orgasms, she often loses the ability to connect with the inside of the vagina and to feel pleasure inside of her vagina and to have internal orgasms. Now, being as a woman who practices, obviously I practice and I teach the jade egg, but I also practice like karsai massage. It's something like an internal lymphatic clearing massage which you do inside of the vagina. And it's interesting because except for people who are really doing Taoist practices, right, and using the jade egg in the Taoist way, because it's all well and good to get a jade egg, put it inside, or learn techniques. People are teaching some techniques, but the Taoist techniques have specific effects on the energy field and specific energy awakening techniques which you won't get from just using a jade egg or learning it with you know, someone who's teaching it via a different style, right? When you're actually working with the energy and activating the jade egg, there's a whole change here to the feeling inside of the vagina. I can say this, I've massaged inside like hundreds of vaginas, and it's almost always that, you know, I find like as I get my finger inside the vagina, I start feeling like a lot of roughness, a lot of unevenness. This is all like blocked. We can say something like blocked lymphatic, but it's like the tissues are not, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think that also there's an element of, yeah, like I mentioned before, the bad penetration techniques. I think they're actually really messing up vaginas a lot more than we think that they are. But through some period of time of massaging inside of the vagina, there's a definite change in the feeling inside the vagina, and also the woman will report the sensations changing and starting to, you know, come awake. Of course, having the massage is really cool, but learning to actually, as a practice, to activate the energy inside of your vagina using meditation and using the jade egg is something that's much more powerful. So you're probably familiar with the idea of storing certain negative emotions inside of the body, inside of certain organs. This is definitely something that like happens, but inside of the vagina we have the same thing. Now, I'm sure you're like familiar with genital reflexology. If you're not familiar with genital reflexology, I recommend to just put a comment in the chat and just say genital reflexology, so I can get my assistant to send you a worksheet I have about genital reflexology that just actually explains about how all this works and how inside of the vagina is actually related to certain organs and certain emotions. And in some sense, I think it's very divine that these blocked emotions come into our vaginas and get stuck there, because were we actually having sex properly, I'm going to just say, these would all get cleared out of our bodies, and we'd all be becoming much more much more healthy, much more happy, and much more spiritually connected into the spirit realm. The fact is, people have just got lost and disconnected from their connection with their sexuality, which means the connection with the divine, the connection with spirituality. It also means the connection, you know, to each other. And, you know, we can look at this in a, you know, like we can look at it up in our heads, you know, but ultimately I'm talking about something that's existing down and within our vaginas. And when we start learning the techniques to actually activate the energy within the vaginas, it's like such a transformation happens to our whole body, because what this actually does is it balances out the whole alchemical system in the body. It opens up the meridians, and it allows the energies to start going through the different centers and to start transforming and just basically doing what it's supposed to be, for us to not just be coping and struggling along on a level of just coping, but it allows us to actually activate and to start truly fully becoming our true self. So this experience, you know, this experience for me, it was amazing, you know, starting to have multiple orgasms. It was amazing. It was really, really cool. That in and of itself, it's like, wow, check what my body's doing. It's amazing, you know, but it was just way more than that. You know, it wasn't even that, you know, these long-term chronic problems I've been having with my body started to heal, but it was actually, you know, that I started to have some, what I can only say is some kinds of like deep activation of my inner vision. And not just my inner vision, but somehow as part of that, like a guidance system, which actually started like guiding me through life and taking me and bringing me through to the places that were my destiny to be and my destiny to go. I think this is all I can say in terms of that, because it was somehow that as I had this activation in my vagina, that there was this activation in and through every part of my being. And when I'm talking about female sexual energy, I'm talking about our connection with not just our wombs, not just even the ovaries and the cervixes, but the actual connection into the vagina, because the vagina is a place we can actually easily go and even touch ourselves. You know, the cervix is an amazing part of the body, because it's kind of like at the bottom of that energy meridian, which takes the energy up through the womb into our hearts and then right into our pineal glands as well, which is just an amazing thing that we have that, you know, that meridian. And I do believe that when we go through this process of starting to clear out our bodies, that is essentially when clear out our vaginas, it is essentially when the energy then starts to move up and to go through those different parts of our being, to start to activate and to really just put us into our power as women, which is very different from, you know, often what people think of as power, because it's all well and good to try to play and vie for power in a man's world. You know, if we try to play men on their terms, in their playing field, and we try to compete with men on the physical dimension and on the male, you know, I guess the male logic, when we try to go into their place and be like men and compete with them, we will always lose, because we are not men. When we as women actually start to step into our power as women, and this is when people say, oh, you're using your feminine wiles, it's like there's this kind of fear that knowing that women are just so powerful, you know. But when we're using our feminine wiles, I'm going to use that word, feminine wiles, I kind of like that word, right? When we're using our feminine wiles is what is essentially a wounded, a traumatized, a toxic kind of way, you know. I mean, the extreme example of that was like what I was saying about, you know, when we're so obsessed with the external that we, you know, that we forget about and neglect the internal, and we're not working on the internal, and then, you know, trying to manipulate, you know, with the external. And, you know, I have no problem with wanting to look pretty, getting yourself done up, getting nice clothes, so on and so forth. All of this stuff in and of itself is not bad, but it needs to be balanced with us as women, right, in our power, you know, in our real authentic power, which of course it's going to be different. It's going to be individual and unique and authentic to each one of us. But this is a power that we're only going to find by going into our bodies, by going inside, by exploring, by really asking and being there and just sitting there and sitting with parts of our bodies where maybe we haven't connected with. And it can bring up tears. It can bring up all kinds of feelings, you know, absolutely. It can, but in the end, what we get out of it, you know, is pretty powerful. Now, there's a Taoist book I read by Ronnie Edlund. I don't know if anybody's heard of her, but, you know, I mean, some people have said I've misinterpreted the book, yeah, but essentially looked at in terms of the Tao understanding of energy, because Taoism is basically all about understanding our energy and learning to work with our energy, right? So women are, I believe the word is centripetal, so we take the energy in, right? Men are putting the energy out. One of those is centripetal, one of them is centrifugal. I can't remember which one is which, right? Yeah, but we take in the energy, right? This means, yeah, imagine like we're going out and we're doing Qigong and inner alchemy practices out in nature, in beautiful places. We learn to like connect with the right energies and absorb them into the body. Like, look how powerful that is. At the same time, if we're taking the wrong energies into the body, look how much more harmful that is, you know? Now, another thing they say is the top half of the woman is aligned to the heavens and the bottom half to the earth. In the man, it's the opposite, okay? So for a man to like develop with energy practice, he actually needs to reverse this, okay, which is quite difficult for a man to do. So most women do actually progress with energy practices much faster than most men do. Another thing is the fact that we have internal sexual organs means we have so much more energy within our own body, so much more energy to work with, so much more energy to be provided through our being. Like, should we decide to learn to work with our energy and harness our energy? Now, actually, when you look at the time that some of the Taoist legends evolved, you actually see that many of the people being talked about were women that were being awfully, terribly persecuted, that start working with their energy, you know, and learning to create a better life for themselves by being in touch with their energy. In fact, at this time, like thousands of years ago in China, many women had just no rights whatsoever. You could just be killed by your husband and you had no right to your life or anything. And when women started using the Tao practices, what they started to learn to do was how to live in a world where they were not so, it was not favorable to them at all. I mean, we complain about things today. It was a lot worse back then. And this is a world which is like was much less favorable to women, yet women learn to use the energy to work on the energy field, work in the energy realm, and be able to create much more beautiful, powerful, amazing lives for themselves. I mean, we can look today, even this whole funny thing about using the feminine wiles. I mean, look how many women were put to death for supposedly practicing witchcraft against the men, right? This had very much to do with being able to work in the energy field, being able to work in the energy realm. And when a man is very in his ego, and of course it's natural for men to be in their ego, there's nothing wrong in and of itself with being in the ego, but not all the time. And as women, we are here to bring men out of their ego. And one of the very powerful ways we can do this is through sex. But if we're not sexually empowered, we're not in touch with our sexual energy, we don't know how to bring that man into the experience of non-egoic sex. Because most sex people are having is egoic sex, right? The whole thing of like dominating, getting off on, you know, the whole porn thing. You know, most of what's represented to us as sex is kind of an ego-based, adrenalized sex. Whereas if you look at Tantric Taoist idea of sex, this is about really opening up, letting go of the ego, coming into the authentic self, and then actually experiencing this awakening of consciousness through the amplification of the energy. Well, I say awakening of consciousness and healing of the whole body is like a really, really big, important part of that too. But the point being here that we as women are actually, in a sense, each one of us is a priestess. And this is something I teach all my female clients, which is how can you actually go back into the sexual situation with your partner and basically take control, so you're having your spiritual and energetic needs fulfilled by him, like on the deepest level, because you are actually enabling him to heal in such a way that he then can step into his masculinity and be there for you as your divine partner. You know, in the old days, the women, the priestesses, they used to awaken men, you know, to the divine purpose of their sexuality in, you know, temples, right? And this is a power we still have today. It's something that it's kind of like it's almost lost, but at the same time, no, it's not. It's still there. We still got it, right? You know, and I mean, for women watching this, right, I'm going to be coming off in a minute, right? But I just want to say, I do have this training for women. If you've not seen it yet, please do drop training, right? I also have a training for men. If you're a man and you want to drop training, why not drop training? I'm going to send you a male version of it, right? You know, but you can have this training and you can start to like understand a little bit more about what these, how you can actually start getting in touch with the sexual energy, and how you can basically start feeling this feeling of your sexual power is this amazing juicy force that's coming through your body, that's not something that you feel makes you vulnerable anymore, that's not something you're scared of anymore, but that really allows you to stand in your power and create the life that's your life, that's your destiny, that life that you want, that you desire, because your desires are your destiny and nothing else, you know. Thank you, Ryan. I thought today, thank you for how I show up authentically. I mean, I don't normally put a lot of makeup on, but today I just thought zero makeup at all. I mean, you know, part of it is, you just get so sick sometimes of just seeing everybody with makeup on, right? I mean, it's often it's just too boring to do it, to sit there and do it. So yeah, and I just feel like the clouds have done this gorgeous, beautiful show behind me. That's been really nice to kind of like be watching this all like changing as I've been here, like talking to you guys. And you ladies and you women, you know. So I'm going live again on Saturday in like 2 days. I'm going to talk about how to be old and horny. Yeah, basically, okay, you know, how it's just rubbish and nonsense that we're going to get to a certain age and switch off of sex and so on. This is not a natural thing, right? It's so peaceful and grounding. I'm glad you hear that, Ryan. I'm glad to hear that, you know. I just want to say as well, like this week, as Jupiter has gone into retrograde, so Venus has come out of retrograde, Jupiter has gone into retrograde, and a lot of stuff has been coming up for me and other women I've been speaking to around our insecurities, right? Around the way that we've long ago in the past had experiences that made us feel little, that made us feel like nothing, that just made us feel, you know, that just made us feel so bad and so nothing, and just so like we were never going to do anything, and we were never going to experience, you know, any kind of a good life, you know. And sure, okay, I know this happens to men, and I'm not taking away from men's experiences, because this is real, what men experience too. However, as women in particular, we are programmed, and we're heavily programmed, and men are heavily programmed to put us down. We as women are heavily programmed to put other people down, other women down. Sometimes we, the women, are the worst to do this, you know, that we try to stop women from being powerful. You know, when we see another woman asking for more money for her job, when we see another woman wanting to do well with her career, wanting to go into her power, even see another woman like in love, or, you know, there's this, you know, I mean, yeah, I think we got to be careful around this, that we're really like empowering each other and, you know, encouraging each other. Like, I like, for example, you know, when I see women, and especially when I see like naturally beautiful women, and especially naturally beautiful like dark-skinned women, because there's so many beautiful dark-skinned women who are also holding a lot of traumas around their appearance, maybe growing up just constantly seeing like white people as the beautiful people. You know, how important it is to just tell another woman, like, when, you know, she's looking beautiful, when she's shining, when she's radiant, when you like her clothes, or whatever is going on, you know, that we do this as well. And really encourage each other to just feel comfortable in our own skin, to just feel comfortable as what we are, because, you know, as I said, yeah, it's all well and good and great to stick on a bit of lipstick and a bit of whatever from time to time. Why not? Yeah. But at the same time, we don't want our lives to be ruled, you know, by an obsession that all we amount to is the looks here, or whatever procedures and so on, and that we're not harming our bodies, you know, to look better, because that's not empowering, you know. And especially if it's being done in a way where we're trying to like do ourselves up to be something that's gonna, you know, when we see all we are here is looking for a man that's going to support us, and then, you know, there's nothing that we are not somehow putting our own in and making our own money and having our own independence and our own power. Because whatever guy we're with, however much we love him, however much he loves us, we should always have our own source of income. We should always have our independence. You know, if all women in the world today had their source of income, and if this mentality changed from expecting a man to always provide to understanding we need to also provide too, I think that so much domestic violence would be prevented. You know, and this is not blaming one person or blaming another person, but, you know, we need to be in our power. We need to understand, you know, as women, we have sides that aren't always nice, right? You know, we have our bitchy sides and so on. You know, we women, we are bitches, yeah? And it's fine. It's cool. Let's be okay with that. Men have their sides to them too. Men have their propensities to them. You know, when a man is like working really, really hard, really, really stressed out, maybe not getting the love that he wants as a woman, this isn't justifying domestic violence. And by the way, women can commit domestic violence as much as men can, but it's just that normally it's more damaging when men are doing it to women. You know, we can take the pressure and the ease off of the men. And also, you know, when we are engaging in sexual practices with the man in the sacred way, where we're actually using the sex to heal him, we're going to be almost eliminating any kind of propensity towards violence, which ultimately men have propensity towards violence because they're here to protect us. You know, they're just living in a society where often they're not using that. And when we have just a buildup of more and more and more, let's say, disconnection from self, you know, a man can get very, very lost in this realm. And we as women really need to be strong and really need to be supporting him. As I said, again, I've experienced violence from males. I'm not in any way saying women are at fault. You know, I'm not victim blaming at all, but I hope that you can understand that what I'm saying is that we as women need to be really stepping into our power, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our families. If we have a man, if we have children, that we need to really be powerful to take care of them. Because when we think of our ancestors giving birth to children in fields, you know, that they were many of the female ancestors were also warrioresses, were capable to actually defend and protect children. Maybe they were being left for large periods of time on their own with the children. They were not pushovers, you know, they are not weak. Yeah, women are not weak. We as women are not weak at all. We are very, very powerful, but so much of activating our power on so many different levels is to do with our relationship with our sexual energy. So I hope that this is okay. I also hope I haven't offended anyone. If I have offended anyone, please do feel free to discuss it with me. Like I said, I'm not talking about justifying any kind of abuse, but what I am saying is we need to understand as women, you know, it is our job, you know, we need to keep ourselves safe. We need to understand what we are. We need to understand what men are. We need to understand the huge imbalances and misinformation in the world, and really be able to be in our power to keep ourselves safe. So I hope that this made a lot of sense, and I hope to see you and more people coming to join me on Saturday to talk about how to be old horny woman. So have a great rest of your day and tomorrow. Bye.